Hi there. I'm Renee. This is Renée, and today I thought I'd jump on here and talk you through my move process and how I moved to France in less than 6 months. And I'm just specifically going to talk through like what I did, how I thought through things, um, and then I think I'll do a separate video on just how I approach the planning process. I plan for a living, so change is not a scary thing for me at all. I actually get excited by it. And so I think I'll talk a little bit separately on how to tackle your own plan, and that from that kind of perspective. So this video will just be more about how I approached it. So full disclaimer, I plan for a living. So keep that in mind. In this video, I'm going to cover kind of how I broke things down, how I organized each month and what I took on, and the things that I needed to do along the way, and as well as some surprise tips that I found along the way. Yeah, so let's get started. So I made my decision to move to France on March 7th of 2024. And so for the remainder of that month of March, my biggest focus was really telling my children, making sure that they had the time to really process with me any concerns that they might have, so that we could talk about how we might manage the future and maintain the close relationships that we have today. That was super important to me. Thankfully, maintaining relationships long distance is a whole lot easier now than it used to be, thanks to tools like WhatsApp and Zoom and all of that. That I'm really glad that we had those conversations and we're able to process through that. And thankfully, now that we're on the other side of it, we are just as close as we've ever been, if not more close, and really enjoy our regular Zoom calls and our WhatsApp calls, and the time that we get to spend together when I go back to the US to visit. And I look forward to them coming to visit here very soon as well. So yeah, that was March. In April, I decided to focus on my visa preparation. So for me, I was filing for a professions liberale visa, which is an entrepreneurial visa. It required me to put together a business plan, a business budget, um, you know, it, not difficult things, but just things that take some time and some thought process. I had a business that I was effectively moving. So it wasn't that I didn't have a business budget, I did, but I needed to think of it in terms of what that would look like in France, which is different than what it looked like in the US. Obviously, currency is different, all of that, but there's other considerations as well, for a business budget in France. Different types of taxes, different requirements in terms of having accountants and things like that. So I began to put that together with some assistance from a business consultant in France that I worked with on that piece of it, just to make sure that I would meet all of the requirements. Along with the business items that had to be readied for my visa, I also had to have just my personal documents together, be able to show that I had savings to back me up if things went awry with the business, things like that. Um, and then I didn't choose in April the place that I was going to land. I waited until I was closer to my actual VFS appointment submission, which I did toward the end of March, or the end of May rather. Just because I was still trying to think about where I wanted to land initially. So in April, it was basically focusing on the visa preparation other than for that first stay. Um, and really deciding on my timing when I would actually go. I had some travels that were pre-planned from the U.S. In July, so I knew I didn't think I could get everything done to move from before then and then have to travel from France to my travel destination. I had a sailing trip in the South Pacific, so it was certainly not going to make sense to do that from France if I was already in Southern California. So I had to think through that, what's the best timing. And I wanted to also spend time with my children, and really make it, I wanted to go to each one of them where they live and spend quality time, which I did. I spread that out throughout the summer, and that worked out really well. So I decided that the timing that made me feel the most comfortable was the end of August. So in all of this, I just really wanted to make sure that I wasn't like packing in my schedule, that I could enjoy the summer. I was still working at the time as well, and so I just had lots of things to consider and balance. So April, visa preparation. And then the other big decision that I made in April was the timing of when I would move out of my apartment. I was in a rental at the time, and thankfully, the we had sold our house a couple of years prior to this, or a year, two years prior to this, and so I didn't have that to worry about. But I needed to figure out the timing, and my lease was actually up in that month of April. So I decided to just do a month to month for the month of May and be out of my apartment by the end of May. I decided to go nomadic for the summer and basically just Airbnb hop, live out of a suitcase. Paolo and I were going to need to do it a little bit on this end anyway, so it's just time to kind of get how that would work under my belt. And yeah, so we decided to do that, which felt like a little bit of stressful crunch, because then I really only had about 5 or 6 weeks to go through all of my things and downsize everything, get rid of everything, because I also made the decision that the only things that I wanted to bring to France were those things that were irreplaceable to me, things that had meaning to me. So at the end of May, I moved out of my apartment, and I, at that time, had basically a closet-sized storage unit remained of the things that would eventually go to France. And I put the big suitcases that would eventually go to France in that same storage unit, and then just kind of took myself down to a carry-on bag, because I had a small car, and Paolo's gear. And then we moved into an Airbnb for the month of June. So April, making those big decisions that dictated timing, and yeah, just really getting clear about how the timing of these big events would actually work out. Okay, let's talk about the month of May in my plan. The month of May became a blur of sorting, giving things away, um, giving myself some grace around things that I just wasn't ready to get rid of. Um, there were a lot of emotions around this, and I did end up creating a couple of boxes that went into storage that had a big note on them, France question mark. They were things that I really didn't want, like logically, I didn't want to keep, but you, I just wasn't in an emotional place to make the decision to get rid of them either. So I just gave myself some grace that there were some question mark things that could live in storage, and that wasn't the end of the world. The other big thing I did in May was I scheduled my VFS appointment and submitted my visa. The submission process is fairly simple. It steps you through in their online portal, and you upload your documents and you submit it, and then it sends you the receipt for the submission, which you need to keep. And then I got online and scheduled my visa appointment. Now, here's a little tip. When I got online to schedule my visa appointment, I could not find an appointment where I needed it to land in my calendar because I had prior travels out of the country booked, and I needed my passport for those travels. So I needed my visa appointment timing in enough time ahead of that trip to get my passport back. So I decided not to panic when I didn't find the visa appointment in the timing that I wanted. And I decided, thank you for the kisses, Paolo. Thank you. I decided to just check back in another day or two. And when I did, I noticed that one of the offices had an appointment come up like for that very next week. Now, I really didn't want that next week, but that told me that, oh, like things do open up here. And obviously people go in and have to change their appointments. So I decided that I was just going to check back regularly, and I would just trust that an appointment would open up. And so the very next week, I checked in on the Monday, and sure enough, there was an appointment in Washington, D.C. for the first week of June, which was the timing that I wanted. Not ideal to have to fly across the country, but getting my passport back was important enough to just make it work. And I've traveled a lot over the course of my life for work, so thank you airline miles and hotel points, and I was able to do that pretty easily. So something to consider. That if you don't find the timing that you need, check back in a couple of days, because things do end up changing. So May saw that scheduled, saw my visa application submitted, big check boxes on my list, and me getting through my apartment and out of it. You can imagine what May looked like. It was insane. But on May 31st, when I was done with all of that, I was very grateful to be done with it. And Paolo and I moved into an Airbnb for the month of June. And and started our little nomadic experience. And I felt like I move too many things into that Airbnb. I took my coffee maker as an example because I had an espresso that I loved and I took it with me. I guess I'm thinking I might as well continue to use it. I have it, and like, why give it away yet? Obviously, eventually, I gave it away. My son was the beneficiary of my Nespresso machine, but yeah. So June then became about going and getting my visa. At the first week of June, I went to DC and had my visa appointment. Very easy process. And then flew back, and literally a week later, my passport arrived back with my visa in it. it I cried. I cried. It was just very moving, and the timing was particularly important to me. So, yeah. Then the rest of June became about taking care of some documents. So, as a woman whose birth name is different than my nom de usage, the name that I use, you have to have all of the documents that show those name changes, and then you will need to have those documents apostilled. An apostille is a document that gets attached to the document certifying that that document was issued by that governmental entity. So for me, that meant I had to reach out to 2 different states and another country to get documents apostilled. And I knew that was going to take time to do because every place has their own process. Some it's easy and it's online and you can do everything just online. Others you had to type letters and mail letters and requests in, and so I just gave myself some time while I was waiting for my visa to come back to research the apostille processes, to get those submissions out there, so that I knew I had everything in process and on its way back to me, because some of those apostille processes take 4 to 6 weeks to actually get the documents back. So thank you, Mr. Bird. Yeah, so that was June. June got my visa back and my apostille requests out, and then there wasn't too much else in June other than just trying to kind of relax and enjoy a bit of summer, and yeah. Okay, let's talk about July. We're getting so close. In July, I decided to really just take the month and not worry about the move too much. I went to see my daughter at the beginning of July and stayed over there for 2 weeks, just hanging out with her, getting some quality mother-daughter time in, and yeah, just enjoying that. And then heading back. My daughter lives in Phoenix, so I just drove over with Paolo, and then driving back to San Diego in time to make my outbound flight for my sailing trip. So I was gone on the sailing trip for about a week and a half, 2 weeks at my daughter's. So it didn't take long for the month of July to be done. We're gonna put Paolo down. Yeah. So July went so fast. Obviously, back when I had my visa appointment, I had committed to the place that I was going to go for that first month. But toward the end of July, I started to think through what was my next place going to be. in France, and I did decide to test myself in a small French village and found an Airbnb and decided that this would be a place where after that first 30 days that I was at my first Airbnb in France, I would stay at this next one for 3 months. I knew that there was going to be a lot of administration that would need to be done. I didn't know if 3 months was going to be enough time for all of that to finish, and it wasn't, but it was enough to get some of the basic, kind of the baseline things taken care of. So I did opt to do that, and that gave me the address to attach my visa to when I did my visa validation. And yeah, it just kind of gave me a sense of having a home base in France for a period of time. So I made that decision around the end of July. Yeah. Let's talk about August, my final month in the US. My flight out was toward, I guess it was the 24th of August. So I had a little more than 3 weeks and a million things to do. I was just in those, days of, is that going to fit in the bag? Should I take an extra suitcase? Should I not? And it ends up at a certain point, I just had to say, okay, I need to draw a line here. I was also in the process of purchasing a car in France, and so I need to consider cars in France aren't as big, so I needed to consider the amount of things that would fit in my new car. So I decided that I was taking 3 big suitcases. Obviously, I had Paolo in his airplane bag, but I also needed to take his crate, which is a soft-sided one that just folds up. So I had 3 suitcases, that soft-sided crate, and Paolo's airport bag and my backpack. And so I needed to draw that line. I knew all of that would fit in the car that I was buying. And I just had to reckon with the fact that not everything that I wanted to bring was going to fit. And yeah, and there were just things that I needed to consider where I was going to be living in France, because I was kind of going to be between 2 different places, and in those first months in 2 different climates, more of a Mediterranean climate initially, and then more of a not snowy winter climate, but cooler climate where I was going to need coats and hats and that kind of thing. So just making sure that I would have everything that I needed became important. So in early August, I spent some time with friends saying goodbye as I was spending time each week kind of sorting and packing. And I did spend the first 2 weeks of August visiting my son in Los Angeles. So relatively close by, but yeah, so just working through those things. And then in those final 2 weeks, making sure that I did Paolo's health appointment 12 days before my flight, because the USDA certification had to be within 10 days of the flight. And my vet recommended that timing, which worked out perfect. And that certificate ended up coming back to me the day before our flight. And then in the final week, I sold my car, which was just a big thing, because then obviously I was not as mobile. I had to run my own errands after that. And at the same time, I was um, executing my purchase of a new car well, new to me, a used car, but new to me in France, and going through selecting the car and then transferring those funds and making sure that we were set up, because I did work with a company that helped me do that they then delivered the car to the Nice airport, which worked out really well. Yeah, it's a very scary process to go through. Just the first time I've ever bought a car sight unseen, but I just had to trust that company that they knew what they were doing, and because I didn't, and yeah, and it worked out great. The car's been great. Um, yeah, and having it delivered to the Nice airport just worked out perfectly, because we were able to get off the plane and get through customs, and the driver met us and helped me with my bags. Thank you. And yeah, gave me a few minutes to walk me through the car, and um, uh, yeah, and probably within about 40 minutes or so of being on the ground in Nice, Paolo and I were in the car and pulling out of the airport. It was pretty fast. Yeah, thankfully. Um, yeah. So lots to do in August, with car things, and that last week as well. Um, my son came down from LA, my daughter came over from Phoenix, and Michael, who was in San Diego, we all got to hang out and spend some quality time together in those last few days. Yeah, which was absolutely lovely. Yeah, so August felt like a blur of final decisions and choices, and closing some things down, and yeah, just getting ready for the big day. Obviously, I had to get prescriptions, because I knew that I would need to bring prescriptions to tide me over until I could see a doctor here in France. I'm pretty healthy. I don't have anything major, so it was just getting thyroid meds. No real big thing to account for. But I did make sure that I had about 6 months of medication with me when I came, and that worked out perfectly. And then I brought a bag of food for Paolo, so he would have enough of the food that he had been on to not have to change foods in those initial weeks. And then, as luck would have it, I found Paolo's food in a store in Gamver, which is kind of like it's kind of like a garden center that also carries animal stuff. And I found his food. Word though, Paolo is on Science Diet in the US. It's just called Science Plan here in France. Same food, same bag, same picture of dog on bag, so you will recognize it. There are plenty of Royal Canin I see all the time over here. There are some different foods available, but if you're using one of those kind of top Science Diet or Royal Canin, you'll find them here in France. So yeah, so that was August, and that got me to the point of boarding a plane and traveling with Paolo, and arriving in France on a lovely Sunday morning, and then heading to my first Airbnb down near the Mediterranean and settling into my new life in France. I hope that this has been helpful. And oh, I wanted to leave you with one final thought. So, one of the things that occurred to me one day, obviously, my father had passed in January, my husband had passed year and a half ish before. And so I had worked through the estate and closing down someone's life. And it occurred to me one day that what I was doing by moving to France was closing down my life in the US. And once that occurred to me, it gave me kind of a framework to think about how I would manage shutting things down, what needed to be closed down in the US, what needed to stay open, because there's plenty of things that had to stay open as well, and what that frame would actually look like. Needing a place to receive mail, a physical address in the US, you will need one of those. There are some things that just have to have a physical address. Thankfully, I have a wonderful friend who has allowed me to use his physical address, and that has worked out quite well. And I still maintain a mailbox, so not everything has to go to the physical address. And yeah, so just thinking about, like, what would it mean for you to close down your life in the US? What would that entail? And thinking through that. So I will leave you with that tip. And yeah, have a great day. And yeah, if not now, then when?